right, so we're now at a point where we might as well implement jump. We want the character to jump in the game, so let's go ahead and get that going. So with my player controller script open, just like we had the flag for is facing right, we're going to create a flag for is jumping. So I'll do private bool is jumping. I'll set this to be equal to false at first, because we're not jumping when we start the game. Let's go ahead and get input for this though. So down in my update, I'm going to get input for jumping. We'll say if input.get button down. So if we press the button down, the button being jump, then we'll set is jumping equal to true. So we press the button to jump, then is jumping is true. Now, inside of my fixed update, I can check to see, well, if is jumping is equal to true, remember the double equal sign. Well, if it's jumping is equal to true, then we want to set the rb.linear velocity to be equal to new vector 2. Well, what do we want it to be? So linear velocity is always going to be based on horizontal movement. What we want to do is we want to actually like add to it. So we want to make sure we're putting some jump force along the way. But we want to leave the x value alone. So I'll say rb.linear velocity x. So whatever the x value is, leave that alone, just like we did up here for movement, left and right. But then I want to add some amount of jump. I'll just do 5. I'll do 5 for now. Let's test it and see. Press play. Now, by default, the jump button is spacebar. Well, my character jumps and then stayed jumping. That's not right. Well, because we never set it to only happen once, is jumping is always true. We don't have any way to turn it off, which is not super helpful. So what I'll do here is under where I apply the linear velocity, I'm going to add in a new line. We'll say is jumping is equal to false. So now, after we've set it to true when we hit the button, and we've applied that linear velocity of 5, the jump force, we then set is jumping to false. So it will only let us jump one time per key press, because it'll automatically be reset each frame. Now jump up and down. If I keep pressing spacebar, I keep jumping multiple times. I can double, triple, quadruple, super, mega jump. That's not really what we want either, but we'll fix that in a little bit. What I want to do instead is I want to modify my animation so that way it plays a jump animation. Well, to do that, I need to connect my jump animation. So with my animator window open, I'm going to go ahead and actually just dock this here so we can see the full thing. I have my jump animation that I set up earlier. Well, I want the jump animation to play from idle or from run. So I'm going to go from idle first though. I'm going to right click idle, right click, make transition. And then I want the behavior for how this would work. So has exit time to be 0. Drag that all the way down. And this ends so that way that looks like this. Then conditions. Hit the plus button. Well, I want a condition for if it's jumping. I only have is running. So I'll go to the top left, create a new parameter. Bool. I'll call this one is jumping. And now, from the connection from idle to jump, I'll set it to be is jumping if it's true. So if the character is jumping while idle, go from idle to jump. I also want to be able to go from run to jump. So I'll connect from run, make transition to jump. Same thing. Condition is jumping is true. change this animation runtime. I'll go, when I hit the jump button, I'll say animator.setBool is jumping to be equal to true. So when I hit the jump button, it will trigger the jump animation. Go back to Unity, press play and see. Press play. From idle, I hit the jump button, it plays a jump animation. The jump animation doesn't stop, but we'll worry about that in a bit. Press play again, and if I go into run animation and then hit jump, it jumps. Again though, it does not stop jumping. It's still playing that same animation. So we need a way to tell the game to stop having the character run the jump animation. We also need to make sure we don't double jump. Luckily for us, we can affect both of those with one thing. So I want to create a ground checker, something that says my character is touching the ground. How do we do that? Well, we're going to use something called an overlap circle. Well, an overlap circle is a physics 2D function that we get access to, where it will basically check if a collider falls within a circular area. So does a circle that we define overlap some other collider, specifically the ground? We need to give it the point to exist in, the radius of the circle, so how big it is, and then a layer mask, which is saying whether or not something belongs to a certain layer. In our script, I'm going to write in here, instead of update, physics 2D dot overlap circle, and then we need to give it its parameters. Let's hover over this and see. Well, first off, it looks like it gives us back a collider 2D, so we need a reference to that. And then we need a point and then a radius. Okay. Well, first thing I need to do is I need to make a new variable. It's going to be a public transform. I'm going to call this ground check. So what this is we're going to define the spot in which we want our overlap circle to go. So let's go into Unity. I'm going to select my player character, drag up. I'm going to right click, create empty, and I'll call this ground check. And this ground check is going to be a spot. We want it to be at his feet. So I'm going to, with ground check selected, drag this down to be at his feet. So looks like negative 0.75 should do. Probably have to move it later, but it's fine. So this ground check is going to be the point that we want to draw the overlap circle in. So instead of physics 2D overlap circle, I will put in the ground check. And now wants the radius, how big we want it to be. I'm going to set it to, I don't know, 1 for now. We actually have a quick error here. It's not ground check. We need ground check.position. So we want the transform, sure, but we'll really care about the position where that ground checker is. All right, so we have this overlap circle. Let's test this out and see how it works. I'm not going to do anything yet, but let's see if we have it in the right spot. I'll press play. We can't see it, unfortunately, because we need to turn on previews. Now to actually see it, we need to change a few things. So we need to add something. It's at the very bottom of my script, but above the ending curly brace. So below flip, I'm going to do private void on draw gizmos. And autocorrect filled in extra for it, so I'll delete this extra stuff. So on draw gizmos. So I'm going to do gizmos.color equals color.blue, semicolon. Then gizmos.draw wire sphere, parentheses, semicolon. Then here I'll do I'll grab the ground check deposition, comma, and then 1. So this will draw a sphere at the same point as our overlap circle for ground check. So first thing I need to do is go to player character, and I need to actually assign ground check there. So to where the ground check is, I want to attach that. And now I have this big blue circle. This blue circle is the debug circle that we just set up. This lets us visualize the size of our checker. And it is way too big. So I'm going to go back to my script. And I'm going to create a new variable. And this one will be private float. Let's call this ground check radius. And I'll set this to 0.1f. I'm going to grab ground check radius, copy this. Then when I'm drawing the overlap circle, instead of 1, I'm going to put in ground check radius. Then in my debug sphere down here, replace 1 with ground check radius. So now that sphere, or that circle rather, should be right there. Small, but we have a visualizer of like, hey, we have to be pretty close to the ground to count as being on the ground. That's good. Though this isn't going to quite work out perfectly the way we want it to, because we haven't defined what a ground is. We also don't have it to not let it jump if it's not on the ground. So we're not quite done. First thing I'm going to do though, is I'm going to go into my grid or the hierarchy, then tile map. Then on the top right, layer. I'm going to add layer. Let's do layer 3. I'm going to set it to ground, capital G. Select my tile map again, layer, ground. So now my ground layer is anything that is part of this tile map. So now we can check to see, hey, is this where we want to be? Can we jump off this? We then need to get a reference to that ground layer. So I'm going to go all the way to the top again, and I'll do a public layer mask ground layer. Then back down to where I have physics 2D overlap circle. After the radius, I'm going to give it the ground mask. So I'll do ground layer. Put that right there. So ground check deposition, the size should be the radius that we defined earlier. And then anything that is ground should only ever be what is on the ground layer. Now we need to actually save somewhere in here if we're on the ground. So I'm going to make yet another variable. Instead of is jumping, I'll do private bool is grounded equals false. Guess at first. Let's see what happens there. So we're going to store whether or not the overlap circle is hitting the ground here. So we'll do is grounded is equal to physics 2D overlap circle. And now let's use this to fix the double jump issue. So we wanted to say if we press the jump button and we're not grounded. So and is grounded. Sorry, if we are grounded. So if we're on the ground and we hit the jump button, then we want to jump. Otherwise we don't. Let's see what that does for us. So I cannot jump. Is grounded is not true. This is not quite working out the way I was hoping it would. That was because I forgot to actually assign the ground layer. So for with player character selected, ground layer, set this to ground. So, you know, always forget to do that. Now I can jump. And I cannot double jump. I can only jump once. The animation isn't fixed, but I can only jump once. So we're making progress. So now we want to set it to be where we aren't jumping anymore if we're on the ground. We have a couple different ways of doing this. But the best way for us right now is probably going to be to do a collision enter 2D. And we could just have it be where the animation is constantly being set, where if we're on the ground, jump being off, but that's not the most efficient way of handling it. So down underneath my update, but above flip, I'll make some new space here for a new function. It'll be private void on collision enter 2D. So that's different. Again, autocomplete gave me too much. So on collision enter 2D. So if our player controller touches another object, we want to say, well, if that collision, if other dot game object dot layer, so that other object is on the layer of ground layer. It's giving me an error. Looks like I forgot the equal sign, double equal sign. So there we go, sorry. So if other.gameObject.layer is equal ground layer, then we want animator dot set bool is falling, or is jumping, sorry, to be equal to false. So if we hit the ground, then set animator is jumping to false. Test this out. Let's see. Let's play and jump. Ground. Nope. Still not working. Well, that's because I forgot to actually set the animator to go from jump back to idle. So from the animator, right click jump, make transition to idle, and set the condition to be is jumping to false. Exit time, turn that off, and I'll shrink that back down too. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and right click from jump, make transition to run. Turn that off, turn that down. I'll set is running to true and is jumping is false. So if I'm running and I hit the ground, I should go right to run. So if I'm in the air and I hit the ground, go right to run. And now, with any luck, it should work. Jump, land, running, jump, land. And now we have jump.